All the earth rolls toward emptiness, and at nightfall the lonely streets fill with ice and cars. Loneliness fills the chest as if one walked by the North Sea. I am here somewhere near the edge of life. A warm room, lamps, some forms I love. To nudge a poem along toward its beauty. Is that selfishness? Is it something silly? Do others love poems as I do? Longing to find you in a phrase and be close there, kissing the walls and the doorframe, happy in the change of a single word. Let's just take a comfortable seat and find our way back into the cathedral. With your hands resting on your lap in that pose of receptivity, relaxed, and letting the shoulders fall and letting them fall again. And the muscles in the face, around the jaw, around the mouth, the eyes, the forehead. The fontanelle space that was the top of your head. Even the muscles behind the ears and in the back of the neck. And then just feeling this wave of unarmoring yourself from the throat down into the chest. Like I like to say, just letting the drawbridge down. And seeing what happens for the next half an hour. Softening the belly. Even as I'm leading, it's difficult for me. I have to let go and let go again. Feet flat. And if you can, your knees at a right angle. Straightening the back. Lengthening the neck just by a millimeter. And now we're in it. And that feeling of alignment, just deepening the breath now. To a count of 4 and then a little pause at the top. And breathing out to 5. Count of 4, pausing at the top. Breathing out to 5. Is this selfishness? Is this silly? Robert Bly asks. To go inward when so much outward needs us. Just by coming into this space, it seems like we have our answer. 4 counts in. A pause at the top. And 5 counts out. And we can make a cathedral space no matter where we are. Like Ram Dass says, falling into meditation while a jackhammer is right beside him on a street corner in New York. Maybe even a deeper meditation for all of that. Just feeling the walls widen, the ceiling rise, as if your apartment, your small room, your house has become this cathedral with its buttresses, its frescoes on the ceiling. And you're inside what has always been you. If you feel your thoughts disturbing you or distracting you, just take a mental step back from them and watch them go by. You're paying attention to them. That's the point of the practice. That's what we're here to do. But we watch them go by. We don't hang on to them and get tangled in them or identify ourselves with them. And as we did last week, just paying attention to the gaps. That negative archaeology pulling those gaps out from underground. That's the happy work we're here to do. Nudging a poem by Robert Bly. All the earth rolls toward emptiness, and at nightfall, the lonely streets fill with ice and cars. Loneliness fills the chest as if one walked by the North Sea. I'm here, someone near the edge of life, a warm room, lamps, some forms I love, to nudge a poem along toward its beauty. Is that selfishness? Is it something silly? Do others love poems as I do? Longing to find you in a phrase and be close there, kissing the walls and the door frame, happy in the change of a single word. It's a poem about daring to be happy in a dark time. And its key question, is this silly? Is this selfishness? Writing a poem, which I would equate to with the practice that we're doing. Is it silly? Is it selfishness to take time to sit in silence, doing nothing? Is it even possible or appropriate in the times in which we live? I wrote an essay right around the time this poem was published in the late 90s called The Happiness Taboo, which has disappeared somewhere. But I wrote it while I was living in the Czech Republic after speaking with many, many trusted friends about the taboo of being happy during the communist regime in those 50 years when the country was basically on lockdown and opportunities were spare. To be the person happy-go-lucky, walking around with a smile on one's face was suspect, as though you were working for that regime, or as though, I was told, you approved of that regime. So this feeling of happiness and the approval of how things are, when they're certainly not good, created a whole culture of complaint in those years. And this is what was told to me by my friends who were intellectuals and academics and writers themselves. So it was a culture of complaint and sadness because it was the only way that they could protest what was happening without being put into prison. You weren't saying anything. You just had a dour look on your face, or you were complaining about the many things that were going on in the day-to-day life. And I think it's very easy to do that. The other side of it is that in the Czech Republic in those years, alcoholism just raged. And it was because you could be happy while drunk. You could say the next day that that was the booze talking. So it gave an opportunity to express, bliss and joy. Unfortunately, it was killing everyone. So what Bly's trying to do here is untangle all of that and think about what writing a poem has to do with happiness, even when the world is edging toward emptiness. He's one of my favorite poets. He was born in Minnesota and he died in Minnesota. He was born in 1926 and he died in 2021 at 94. And many of you know his work. He won the National Book Award for The Light Around the Body. A deeply spiritual poet. And his spirituality was this hard-headed attitude that one can be happy when times are hard. He was a poet of the ice and the snow. And he said that making a poem involved 3 steps. The first step was an experience of the interior that you had when you were a child. You went out into the fields and you felt that even though the field and the insects and the birds and the grass were out here, they were all somehow contained inside. So that feeling of the interior was tantric. It was a connection with the world out there as being one body of which you are merely a cell, of which you are a part. He says that all poets have this experience in one way or another. For Rilke, it was experiences of solitude. For Walt Whitman, he says it happened rather late in his 30s, being jostled around by bodies in New York City. But it's got to happen in order to take you to this space in which what you're describing out there becomes a metaphor for everything that's happening in here. They're one thing. They are one world, the experience of the interior. So the next part is that when we write our first poem about that experience, we want to go back again and again and again and try to recapture it with a structure of cunning. He's quoting James Joyce when he talks about cunning, how the artist's work has to do with creating a daily practice that will bring them as close as possible every day and with consistency to that experience of the interior. And then the third thing he says poets have to do is let the animal live, that when the poem comes out, you have to get out of its way. You have to let the poem determine the container into which it's going to fall. If you try to impose something from the outside too rigid, the poem will asphyxiate. If you leave it too open and leave no container, or leave it for the reader to decide, the fire will go out. So you have to let the animal live and create, as it were, a habitat for it to exist in captivity. And it's got to be exactly like its natural habitat, which was that first experience of the interior. And these three things are here in this poem about writing poems. There's a tantric sense of the world, the cars and the ice. It's as though they're inside him. And in a phrase, one can kiss the walls and the door frame. Life has an edge as if it's a room. So there is a way of describing the world here that feels like it's both inside and outside all at once. The second thing is that he's surrounded himself with the things he loves, a warm room, to nudge the poem toward its beauty, some forms I love, which is what we do. We sit at our desks and we surround ourselves with our objects and our photographs and those small reminders of who we really are. And the third is that he lets the animal live, which is the happiness that comes of moving words around. Whether it changes the world means nothing to him. But this small movement of words is a way of letting the animal live, of reminding oneself of our connection to the outside, that everything is a metaphor for everything else. Somehow, in the way that he expresses it, it's not silly at all. Tara Brach says, we're unhappy because we've forgotten we belong to each other. And isn't a metaphor a way of saying that this belongs to the same properties as that? And isn't writing a way of attesting to our belonging to a common experience? And what is it that you're nudging toward its beauty? What is it that you're nudging toward its beauty? To capture that sense of belonging between the inside and the outside. All the earth rolls toward its emptiness, and at nightfall, the lonely streets fill with ice and cars. Loneliness fills the chest, as if one walked by the North Sea. I'm here, somewhere near the edge of life, a warm room, lamps, some forms I love, to nudge a poem along toward its beauty. Is that selfishness? Is it something silly? Do others love poems as I do? Longing to find you in a phrase and be close there, kissing the walls and the doorframe, happy in the change of a single word. Let's go back into our meditation. Deepening the breath again and straightening the back, lengthening the neck, feeling that conduit between the heart and the head. Four counts in, five counts out. What was that experience of the interior for you? Where were you when you felt that the outside was inside and the inside outside? And what do you do now to nudge your curiosity, your wonder toward its beauty? You might write poems, gardening, raising children, teaching. How does this language apply? How are you using your cunning to surround yourself in your space and your practice with reminders of who you really are? And then, of course, how are you getting out of its way? How are you letting the animal live? I like to quote my funny Valentine, "You make me smile from my heart." When you smile from your heart, the smile spreads to every cell in your body, not just the face or the eyes. but the liver and the kidneys, the soles of your feet. Somehow, when we're engaged in that activity, we might feel a smile in our heart. That goes very deep. It might involve adult grief. Bly describes in his book, A Little Book on the Shadow. It's a smile that includes and embraces the grief we're all feeling. Two more breaths. 4 counts in. 5 counts out. In our practice, we're having that experience of the interior. We come back to the cushion with cunning, and then we just let our thoughts and our emotions pass before our eyes. We let the animal live. We stand back and watch it. Happy with the tiniest shift of our awareness toward reality. It's not silly. Nudging a poem. All the earth rolls toward emptiness, and at nightfall the lonely streets fill with ice and cars. Loneliness fills the chest as if one walked by the North Sea. I'm here, someone near the edge of life, a warm room, lamps, some forms I love, to nudge a poem along toward its beauty. Is that selfishness? Is it something silly? Do others love poems as I do? Longing to find you in a phrase and be close there, kissing the walls and the doorframe, happy in the change of a single word.